This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. And today's subject matter is your conflict culture. And if you go to the Facebook page for the Intentionality Gurus, you will see that prior to recording today, I posted something out there because I think I've really been in conflict for the last couple months, um, based on the way I was raised and the way I've my voice has told myself how to do things all the time. And so right now I'm even in conflict with myself. So today's podcast should be quite interesting. So, Candace, am I on the right wavelength?
Possibly. We'll find out.
Okay.
So when you say that you think you've been in conflict for the last couple of months, what does that actually mean for you?
I'm having a real hard time making decisions based on things from my past that come up. And one in particular, I have an acquaintance that just has been rubbing me the wrong way. And I can't find the words to nicely tell that person that. And so I'm doing a lot of avoidance, and that's bothering me because that's what I did in my past. And over the last 3 years that we've been doing this podcast, I've been trying not to be like that, been trying to face things head on. And I'm not. And it's this one issue that has sort of grown into other places where there's certain things I want to say, but I'm holding back.
And what is it that you're holding back?
I feel like we're living in a world of so much conflict. I'm holding back the conflicting feelings that I'm having on just day-to-day conversations. And so I don't feel like I'm being honest with myself. And basically, that's how I was brought up. I was always told, say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, anything you want, whether you wanted to do it or not. And that's how I see myself in the last couple months. And it's wearing me down.
So it's denying something in you, like your own voice. And
right. Yep.
You're strangling that off.
Yep.
Okay. And then when that happens, how do you feel towards the other person?
I'm internally, I'm angry. On the outside, I'm not showing it. And it's sort of making me ill because it's like my insides are battling with my outside and my outside is battling with my inside, and nobody's winning.
And so the place that the common denominator to prior experiences, maybe at different phases in your life, is that not speaking your truth.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And what would happen if you spoke your truth?
I was always afraid that if I spoke my truth, the other person or persons would deny me my voice. So no matter what I would say, it would go in one ear and out the other. I'm not sure that's really what would have happened, but that's what I believed.
But that's the outcome nonetheless.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And so knowing that you've already lost your voice by not speaking it, what occurs to you?
I'm feeling like I'm not taking care of myself because of that. And yet I'm feeling somewhat paralyzed over it. It's like, I got to take care of myself. I've got to I got to speak my truth. And it's not that I'm lying. I'm just not saying what needs to be said.
Being candid. Yeah.
Right.
And so, but what if you were to be candid with that person? What might happen? I mean, in my own case,
yeah.
I worried that I would singe hair off of people, because by the time I was able to speak my truth, there was a lot of heat behind it. I was afraid that the heat would be beyond what I could control.
Well, when this all sort of came to a head, that's exactly how I felt, that whatever I said was going to come out loud and mean, and it was going to scorch everybody, even innocent people who may just be walking by. As it's gone on, part of me feels that it's petty on my side, even though I think it's important. So I'm in conflict with myself, because I'll think about it and go, I don't know why it's bothering you so much. It's such a petty thing. Let it go. And I think about that. And then it's, then I argue internally, no, it's not so petty, but I don't know how to get it out so that I don't scorch everybody. And at the same time, it makes sense, because it's gone on too long. That's the biggest problem.
So because it's gone on so long, it makes it harder to speak it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And if you had spoken it earlier, what would that have looked like?
I think it would have fractured the relationship, at least initially. Now that I look back, I think that I could have repaired at least part of that fracture. But I wasn't ready to take that step back then.
Yeah. Okay. You're at a different part on the path.
Right.
And so is the relationship one where it's an all or nothing?
For the other person, absolutely. For me, I'd be willing to have a portion of it back.
Okay. So if you were to speak your truth, that person would shut you off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And what would that be like for you?
Well, before we started talking about this, I would have said very, very hurtful and not worth the conversation. Now that I'm thinking about it, it probably, if they make the choice that they don't want anything to do with me, it probably is for my best.
And in what way?
Because one of the things that I've been talking a lot about on our podcast here at New Cleveland Radio is, self-care and being true to ourselves. And I obviously haven't. And not being true to myself, I do believe that I've been shortchanging other people in my life, because I'm walking around on eggshells. And maybe if I crack the one big eggshell, maybe I don't have to worry about all the small ones anymore.
Well, and the question that occurs to me is, are you in a true relationship, or are you going through the motions of a relationship when you don't feel safe speaking up?
Right. Like I said, up until we started talking, and gosh, it helps, because I haven't talked out loud to anybody about this. I now look at it saying to myself, we both would be better off. First of all, the other person, I'm sure, has this feeling that I'm holding back, but they too haven't asked what's going on. I almost feel like a little kid by saying, well, they should know what they said and did. But they obviously don't. And I don't know. I think I would probably just, I could heal myself from all this if I just have a conversation. But I just have to make sure that I can do it in the right way.
So where are your boundaries in this?
I have no idea right now. I mean, I don't want to come across as a raving lunatic, but I want the other, when I speak my truth, I want the other person to know how much they've hurt me. Because I think if I don't get that out, I'm leaving myself subject to let somebody else do the same thing to me.
So if you don't learn it in this instance, you'll just carry it forward.
Absolutely. Yep.
And let's say this current person says, you're out of your mind, you know, there's something wrong with you, and so on. How do you deal with that?
That's when I know that I can truly cut them off, because I feel secure in what I'm feeling. I just haven't wanted to, like I said, upset the apple cart. I guess I was hoping it would just like go away, and it never does. And I know that. But that's what I kept hoping.
So when you use the phrase upset the apple cart, it makes me curious about what price have you paid to keep the apple cart upright?
I've paid a huge price with my health. In fact, I put myself back into therapy about 5 weeks ago because, I mean, I was truly getting myself sick. Although I hope she's not listening, but the therapist has done nothing for me other than to remind me that I've made myself physically ill. So I'm now thinking about quitting therapy again, but that's a whole other story. I think as I read the title before, it just struck a chord to me that my upbringing, the culture I grew up in about being the good girl, saying yes, not, not purposely upsetting other people. Oh, it's always been okay if they upset me. I can go in my room and I can cry and get over it. But this time, going into my room and crying is not getting over it because I've learned enough to know that in this case, my feelings are justified. And I've been holding on to the relationship, like I said, hoping that maybe it would just resolve on its own and I wouldn't have to upset somebody by telling them my truth.
What do you have control over?
What I say and what I don't say, and how I feel.
Anything else?
My health.
What don't you have control over in this relationship?
Oh, what they choose to say, what they choose to feel.
Okay. So what have you learned, say, in the 15 commitments or in the grief recovery method material that seems like it may not relate, but there are some commonalities in just our prior last couple of weeks in terms of some of the conflict conversation?
So this person has been in my life a fairly long time. We've shared so many things and things that I probably have only shared with my husband. So when this angst, this whatever we want to call it, began a couple months ago, I guess part of my fear was, well, she knows so much about me. What would she do with that if I angered her? And I think that's part of the reason I was holding back. But I don't think there's anything that I've shared that even if she took out the front page article on the New York Times, that it would hurt me in any way. In the beginning, I would have thought that, but I can almost be sure that it wouldn't affect me.
So if it were to occur, you would keep your equanimity, you'd keep your balance.
Yeah, I believe I would, because again, those people who really know me, and I thought she was one, will know that there's no truth to it. But like I said, in the beginning, when this all started, my mind went in the other direction. I remembered different things my mother used to say. One of the things was never hang, your dirty laundry out for your neighbors to see. And it was like, I knew if I confronted her, that's what it might be like. And so I kept thinking, how can I do it differently so that I'm not hanging out my dirty laundry? And that is part of the culture that was brought up by. And I thought over the last couple of years, I had really segregated that and, have come, forward quite a bit. But then this hit, and all I could think about is, I don't want somebody to say that I'm the bad person. I don't want to look like the bad person. Of course, if I talk, I might be. And it's just totally taken a lot out of me.
So your thoughts about saying something before departing, or just quietly receding into the background and not?
No, I don't think I can totally recede. I've been doing it for, like I said, a couple months now. It's not helping me. I'm not being honest to myself. And there is that slight chance that if I'm honest with this person, maybe we can find, a middle ground, or maybe they have no idea, where it all took me. It could be, I bring it up, we have a conversation, and we truly hug, and, life goes back to what was normal for the two of us.
And is it possible that you have those kinds of, close moments, and yet the message hasn't been delivered?
Absolutely.
Now, does that mean that you haven't delivered it, or she hasn't received it, or both?
No, I haven't delivered it because,
Okay.
out of fear. It's like, if I don't say anything, well, you're still in my life and you think we're getting along, and, I'm playing the game.
At your own expense.
Yep.
Okay, so that, if I understand you correctly, and I'm not suggesting that this be so for you, but you can't continue on that path.
No.
Okay. So then, if you were talking to me, I was telling you these things, what would you tell me?
I think and again, relationships are different, but if you were her, and the personality that you have, I think I could have come to you almost right in the beginning and just, ask about, where did these comments come from? Am I missing something? I wouldn't put it all on you. And I think I would have known right from the start that either, I heard it wrong, or why I heard it wrong, or yes, I did hear it, and this is what you believe. And I think then we could have a conversation. Well, what is it that we need to do to get back on the same wavelength we were before?
But you could trust me to be open to having that conversation.
Right.
And that's not what you feel here.
Right. And this other person, we've been through something like this in the past, but not to this degree. She always has to be right, but she's never gone this far. And so in the past, it was, easy to say, come on, here are the facts. You may want to be right, but, here it is in black and white. And it'd be like, okay, this time, there's just something about the confrontation that I felt right from the beginning. If I would have said anything at all, it would have been the end of a long-term friendship. And I wasn't ready for that.
So that may bear some scrutiny. It's not the friendship, it's something else that's keeping you in the relationship.
Could be.
Something to look at.
Yet.
Yeah, exactly. And let's say you looked at it and you realized that was the case. What might that do for you? I'm not saying this is just trying to jacket.
Yeah, sure.
Jacket.
Yeah. Well, if I'm not going to even say if, when I have this conversation, and it shows that I've been wrong or took it in the wrong context, I want to dissect that and figure out how I let that happen. I mean, I want to learn from this.
There wasn't a right or wrong. What if there was just whatever?
Exactly. So it's not so much that I want to go and say, hey, you were wrong when you did this, or you hurt me when you did this. It's more about, we're not connecting in the same way because of this incident. And, do you feel any different? Because in some ways, I don't think she does. And it's okay if she doesn't, but then why am I feeling the way I am? And I can't blame her for my feelings because those are mine.
Okay. So, thinking above the line and below the line from the 15 commitments and the, grief recovery thing, this is a perfect example of a change in behavior or a pattern of change in the mixed emotions we feel when there's been a change in events or behavior.
Right.
And so this is potentially, there has been a change. And then if you speak up, there may be more of a change, which can be a good thing. It's that mixed emotions and not so good thing.
Right.
In our perspective. And it seems from what you're telling me, it sounds like it's happening on a really visceral level because you can think your way through it, but it's not a head thing, it's a heart thing.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So in talking about the culture of conflict, the point is it's all around us. We're not going to eliminate it. It's there. And to be able to feel that we can be candid, I always say be candid, but be kind, especially with me, because I have very sensitive feelings. But so to be able to have that type of conversation and without going in with a sense of abundance with somebody that you might think doesn't have the hard wiring to be any other way than they've been. And without, basically grabbing the mic on this, so to speak. I had a similar situation where I had somebody that I collaborated with on a lot of things, and she would make these carpy comments, and then they became targeted at me as if I wasn't in the room or wasn't hearing them and so on. And it was just too awkward to speak up and say, what are you thinking? What you would say something like that to a friend? I just didn't get it. And so I receded into the background, never spoke to that individual again. Not an effective way to handle it, but it was all I had, the only bandwidth I had at the time. But I still regret that, my behavior in that. So in this context, there seems to be a lack of trust. Okay. And that you can rely on this person. And it's not the right word, but it's the closest one I can come up with at the time. But to be fair, to be open, because of that, on that visceral level for you, this is almost like life or death.
To some degree, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a scary place to be. So what if you were to approach this person? I'm not suggesting you do it, but what if you were to approach them and just say, I'm feeling some unease about our conversation 3 weeks ago, and I'm wondering what your thoughts were about that, and leaving it open door conversation, and just to be curious about it, what might happen?
Based on past experiences, she will probably act like she has no idea what I'm talking about, and she may not, but typically that's, what she would do. And then she'd say, what was the situation? If I told, in this case, I would tell her the situation. And either one of two things, she's going to listen and she's going to, in detail, explain to me why she did what she did. And again, I may not.
And why you shouldn't have the feelings you have.
Well, yes. Yeah. And I've been told that since the day that the two of us met, basically that my feelings don't count. And it was the same kind of dialogue that I had had with my mother and my brothers when I was growing up. Okay. You'll count someday, but you don't count now. But there were so many other things in our friendship that I liked. I actually put up with it. Okay. But I wasn't afraid to speak up in the last year or so. And I think that's what has thrown me. Why, why did this happen all of a sudden? Now I feel stuck. I'm so afraid to say something to you. And so instead of saying it to you, I'm pretending like everything's okay, but it's not. And then, I put myself back in therapy to try to talk about it. And the interesting thing about therapy was I talked to the therapist about a lot of the techniques that we've been using here in the podcast. And she actually made me feel like, I have no idea what you're doing, and that makes no sense to me. So now I'm being put down not only by the remarks I heard from my friend, but now I'm paying somebody to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about or thinking.
How is that possible?
I mean, how is it possible? Somebody has to be bigger and smarter than you. And if you let them do it, which I've done so many times in my life, you start to believe it. In this case, I don't believe it.
So remember the body compass we did way, way, way back, where we got in touch with a really, unhappy episode, and we gave it a number on the scale. The 0 was in the middle, and then it went down to -10 on one side, and then 0 in the middle.
Yep.
It goes to +10. Where would this experience be? Staying in this relationship, where would it show up? The way it currently is.
The way it currently is, it'd probably be in -100.
Okay.
Because I would totally destroy myself. And that's why I was so glad to have this glimmer of words that made me stop and think today. I mean, you sent this to me a day or two ago, and I glanced at it, and it was just like, okay, that's the title. But today, preparing for the show, on myself. I posted this thing on Facebook. When I read it, it was like, oh my God, I've let my past truly dictate what I'm doing right now. And there are things in my past that should not be dictating me today.
Well, they no longer fit us. They don't serve us anymore. They didn't serve us then, but we were too little or whatever, unformed to have that awareness. So if knowing that this is like a negative 100 on the body scale, what occurs to you?
If I let it continue, I'm probably going to destroy other relationships. And so I really have to put on my big girl pants and, sit down and have a conversation and know that it can sever a relationship temporarily or for good. And then I'm going to have to watch myself to make sure that I stay healthy during that transition.
So what's the most generous way that you could go into that conversation that would not make either one of you wrong? You would just be and get what you need from the relationship.
Well, I don't want to go in, blaming her, although deep down inside, that's what I've been feeling. And I certainly don't want to say, what did I do wrong? But I think maybe if I can
be told.
Yeah. But I think maybe if I confronted that, being honest, I've been uncomfortable, for almost 2 months. You and I had a conversation, and it has changed me, but personally, not in a good way. And maybe even explain that to her, what's been happening. And we may not even have to talk about what originally happened. That might just trigger it for her to understand that either I was going through something and I was overly sensitive to it, or if she wants to take the high road and say, that's what I saw, that's what I think, and and if we can't even collaborate on it, then I'm going to have to let it go. Not just my feelings, but I'm going to have to let the relationship go.
So what if there weren't words like, more or less, or, better or worse, those qualitative elements? So maybe it was too sensitive. What if that wasn't an element? Couldn't be, those words did not exist. It's not about being too sensitive and so on. It's saying there's this dynamic that has occurred that concerns me, upsets me, and I'd like to have a conversation about it. What are your thoughts? And leave it open without filling in all the blanks. What would that conversation look like?
I don't know. I mean, she tends to, there's certain things that I really like about her personality because they're not things that I can easily do. So if I did that, I almost can see her saying, well, this is what you did. This is what you did. This, and giving me this whole list. And if you didn't do these things, then we wouldn't be having this conversation because you'd be okay.
So we know that approach isn't going to work. That's just going to keep you in your stalemate. So what's a way to approach it that won't? I mean, what are your values? What do you value in the relationship that you want to enhance more of?
Prior to this, if she would have, when she would talk to me in that way, I felt comfortable not, arguing with her, but just being able to state my case, very simply, so for instance, if she would have said, it's your fault because you did X, I would come back and say something like, it's true, I did X. So maybe the next time I can think it through a little bit better. But if I still feel I should do X, I will. And usually the two of us would laugh it off and she would say, yeah, that's what you'll do. And so I felt like we were understanding each other.
And then something happened to change that thinking.
Yeah, there was just something in the situation we were in that I couldn't respond then. And I just I absorbed it to the point that I was just surprised that she didn't notice that how quiet I got. And I felt like I had, on the 0 to 10 scale, that's the saddest face.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I saw myself sitting there. Like I can't even talk. And I've got this really sad emotion and you're not even seeing it.
And it's probably like you felt when you were a little kid, powerless.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what's a powerful but not aggressive way to go into the conversation?
First of all, being honest with her that that I've been faking this, like everything is okay between us, and it's not, and actually just go back and take her to the conversation and explain to her why.
And what if she doesn't agree?
Then I have to accept the fact that this probably can't be resurrected. And if she disagrees, I know deep down that I feel comfortable with walking away. Because I don't want to be pulled like this. It's not good for me. It's not good for other people around me.
Right. Well, it's like that book, The Body Keeps the Score. So, I mean, that energy is going someplace.
Yep.
So there's a concept about rather than putting something on the table and shoving it over to the other person's side of the table and like forcing it on them, to put it in the middle of the table, saying, I'm putting it in the middle of the table here for our mutual consideration. And I'm asking you, in the interest of our friendship that I value, for us to be able to talk about it, somewhat non-emotionally, or at least not aggressively, whatever words choice you have, etc. And then it's up to that person to then take it and bring it to their side of the table and embrace it or not. But just the visual metaphor of having something in the middle that isn't being forced on either side has some power to it. So what occurs to you when you hear that?
Actually, I mean, that sounds like what I want to do, because maybe if I see it sitting in the middle of the table, maybe I can see portions of it that, and I don't even want to use the words fault, but part of it does belong on me.
Participation in.
Yeah. And, and some, is hers. And that would clear up a lot of things for me, because, we may try to tell a lot of people that everything is black and white, but it's not. I mean, there are so many other shades. And yet, what this has done to me is I've become too black and white in my thinking, and I don't like it.
And we're all muddling through life the best we know how. So, with that kind of framework, so you do value the relationship so long as there's some give and take.
Right.
And it's not at your expense. And you're responsible for managing your boundaries. It doesn't mean other people aren't going to, are automatically going to say, oh yeah, Karen has that little boundary, I'm just going to honor it. It's like, no. They're constantly testing that little fence.
Right.
So as long as you're aware of what those boundaries are, but to be able to anchor to what you value and to be able to articulate that and be true to yourself, and then see what the other person does with it. And if she behaved badly, let's say, I'll use a qualitative phrase there, then, and you knew that wasn't for you, how would you leave that interaction? In what state, I guess is the word I was searching for, would you leave that interaction?
So you're saying that if she doesn't take any responsibility, and I feel,
or even isn't open to, if she's well defended, isn't open to even looking at this thing on the table, much less maybe bringing it towards herself, but you were okay with that, what would that do for you?
I think that would identify to me that this is a toxic relationship, and I think I would feel very justified and comfortable in walking away.
And what if you were wrong?
If I'm wrong, I'll figure it out at some point. And if I think it's important enough, then I can attempt to go back and say, I'm sorry.
So my question, what if you were wrong, was actually a trick question, because you wouldn't be wrong. You're operating on the best information you had and emotions you had in the moment.
Right.
And from what I know of you, you're operating in good faith. It's not, I don't detect that you have maliciousness in your goals here. So you just don't want to feel that negative 100.
Right. Yeah. And, even though I'm operating in good faith, it doesn't necessarily mean that, my thinking may be skewed. I don't think it is today. So if I chose to walk away, but let's say a couple months from now, a year or so from now, something else, I read says something to me that says, you know what, maybe you should go back there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I want to get to a safe place that I would do that. Because one of the things that I learned growing up, loved my mother to death, but my mother held grudges, and grudges to the point that when somebody was out of her life, they were out of her life. And it used to bother me a lot as a young kid. I was always afraid, what am I going to do that is going to create a grudge and I'd be out of her life?
That's a scary place to be. Yeah. I mean, that's a very vulnerable place to be. I mean, that's literally life or death for a kid.
Yeah. And, that's always been in the back of my mind. And I have a wonderful husband who forgives everybody for anything. Okay. And so going through this, I don't think he's 100. I would not do what he does, but because if somebody's wrong, in my mind and it's affecting me, then I have to make that choice. Am I going to let it keep affecting me, or am I going to walk away from it or resolve it? So I'm not like him in that respect. And I know that part of me is, has this little angst against him. How can you live your life that way? And I can't. I want to be like you and not have things roll off my shoulders.
Well, and is this a matter of forgiveness of her?
No, it's more than that. I think I could easily forgive this person if they understood where I'm coming from. If they don't understand, that's my cue that it's toxic for the two of us because we're not communicating.
So is understanding your feelings validating them? Are they not valid unless they're understood?
I'm going to go 50-50 on that.
Are we bartering now?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. I guess I really want my feelings. See, to be validated doesn't mean that you have to totally agree, but you're listening and you're aware of them.
Acknowledged.
Yes. And that's all I'm looking for.
And what if you stated that?
I guess I should. Didn't think about that.
Then she would at least know what the target is.
Yeah. I just want to know that I'm being heard and understood to the best of her ability.
And someone cares that you have feelings too, that your viewpoint is skewed and cockamamie as it may be, is okay and acceptable, at least for the short term.
Yep.
So can you get that for yourself? Maybe not from her.
I'm going to work on it.
Maybe not from her, but where would you get that from?
Internally, I've got to forgive myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the context of the culture of conflict, the whole idea behind it is to be conscious about what we're creating. So because tensions are around us, they're unavoidable at work, at home, et cetera, et cetera. And the way to create the culture that we want that allows us to navigate through them effectively is to make connections, to know that you're going to interpret the actions favorably, that, assume the best about the other person. So a lot of this harkens to the 15 commitments, some credibility that you can be relied on to be, not to gouge and not to, take advantage of somebody else's vulnerability. And then reliably in terms of, you'll follow through on your word, those kinds of things. And then just as the author of the book, The Good Fight, talks about, ooze integrity, that you can be candid and vulnerable, and they can be candid and vulnerable, and neither side would take advantage of each other, because without that, then it's more pro forma, it's going through the motions than a true friendship. Sadly, and there's a lot of that going on, particularly if these are business friendships and so on. So, and then to increase your sense of trust, act as if they're trustworthy, is one of the things she talks about. But to normalize the tension, because it's not that we'll have conflict, being in conflict is the absence of tension. It just means that we have a way to navigate it. So I think that's what you're going to be embodying as you navigate this this episode. And I'll wish you well, and I hope you'll update us.
Oh, I will. And that's one of the things that I think is important for all of us to understand, is that, we're constantly evolving and changing, and it can take one look, one word, to throw us backwards or push us to go forward. And this I was not expecting. And again, I just may have been in a more vulnerable spot when it all happened. And, I can take responsibility for that. And I've been too vulnerable to really confront it. But I know I have to, because if I don't, I'll really get sick. And
your health is at stake.
Yeah.
It can't be at your own expense. It doesn't have to be at anyone's expense, but particularly yours. So.
Exactly.
Kudos, Karen. Kudos.
All right. Well, that was a heavy session today.
But how do you feel now on your body compass compared to where you started out?
Yeah. I feel like I'm right in balance. I'm at that 5, and it could tip either way. But it's okay, because that's the only way that I can do the self-care that I need.
Exactly.
And interestingly enough, while we were doing this podcast, I had 2 notices that pulled up on my phone, and it's from this individual. So
possibly listening.
No, luckily they're not, because we're recording. But the interesting part is that makes me understand that they have no concept of what I'm going through, and that's my responsibility.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Good luck.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll do this again in 2 weeks. And again, the book, The Good Fight, I probably should have opened it up the other day when I was thinking about this situation, because it probably would have helped. So it's out there on Amazon if anybody wants to purchase it. And
and it's by Leanne Davey, D-A-V-Y.
And we will put that in the show notes. So everybody have a good day and be true to yourself. Love it.
Sounds good. Take care, Karen. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.